Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Trendyol Technology Meetup. We are happy to host today Sandro Mancuso to hear about the strategic approach to software modernization. And I would like to first invite Cenk Çivici to do a small introduction about the session. Welcome, Cenk.
Hello all, good evening. Welcome to Trendyol Tech Meetup. I'm Cenk, Head of Technology at Trendyol. I'm really happy and excited today. Our guest is Sandro Mancuso. He's the author of Software Craftsman. If you have not read it yet, it's definitely recommended. And he also founded the London Software Craftsmanship Group. His talk today is about software modernization, a strategic approach. And this is obviously very important for all tech companies, and Trendyol is no exception. We started a major modernization effort probably 4 years ago. We called it replatforming at that time. And we basically started moving to cloud native services from a monolith application. And although these efforts seem purely tech related, they are not. These efforts usually fail when they are only seen as technical. And the platform needs to continuously evolve. In a tech company, usually the platform is the business. And the cost of change in the platform needs to be kept at a minimum level. So the platform, the business, the organization can scale without big efforts, big cost. And growth always presents new opportunities. If we cannot drive change fast enough, the company will miss new opportunities. And in our case, modernization was about business agility. This effort enabled us to move much faster and grow in new business areas. It was not about technical issues at all. And this is not a one-off effort. Platform will continue to evolve forever as the business evolves. So there is always a better solution. And Sandro has a lot of experience about this subject. He worked with many clients in UK, in other countries as well. So he's going to share with us his experience about how we can start this modernization, what we should be careful about, and really happy to see him with us today. So Sandro, the stage is yours.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be speaking to all of you. Thanks for Trendyol for the invitation. And also, I'm very happy to hear from you what you were describing, your modernization efforts, and how aligned your ideas are with the ones that I'll be presenting today as well. So yeah, very pleased to be here. Okay, so today, I'm going to talk about a strategic approach to modernization. So before I even talk about that, let me give you some background. Myself, I was always involved in software craftsmanship. I've been involved with the Agile movement at the beginning, and then later on with the craftsmanship movement and technical practices in general. And what was interesting to see is that a lot of people that resonated with software craftsmanship and technical practices, they were people that could understand the value of technical practices. They could understand the value of technical excellence. But in order to understand the value of technical excellence and technical practices, you normally need to have suffered the pain of bad software. It's very difficult for you to explain to someone the advantages of excellence in technology when they haven't felt the pain of lack of excellence, right? So, and the reason I'm saying that is because software modernization acts exactly in that space. So many of us try to drive technical change. So we as developers or technical people, we see issues, but we not always have the right, ammunition to drive that change. So this talk is about explaining to everyone that wants to drive technical change, being software developers, being architects, CTOs, product owners, even like business engineering managers. So everyone that understands that there are issues that the state of the systems are not at a place where they can enable business agility, as it was being said before. But how do we go about that? How do we go about making a case, convincing other people, using the right arguments in order to drive that change? So that's where this talk came from, because this is the work that we do with a lot of our clients. And although some people are very excited about modernizing systems, a lot of people, mainly the ones paying for that modernization, cannot see the value. So what is the value of modernizing those systems? So this talk is about that. It's about driving technical change and aligning the business and technology so that we can do that. So I think that, first of all, we need to start defining software modernization. So the way that I tried to define that was that software modernization is a continuous process of improving strategic systems in order to increase business agility. I chose those words carefully because they actually mean something, right? So, for example, for me, software modernization is not an activity that you start and stop. For businesses where the platform, as it was being said before the talk, the platform, the technology, the systems, they normally are the business. For companies where technology is at the heart of their business, software modernization is always a continuous process of improvement, because as time goes by, the needs of the business change, the structure of the company change, the demands of their clients and potential competitors change. So things are always in evolution. So evolving and modernizing your systems should be a continuous process. But then where do we modernize? Right? So I'm not in favor of modernizing everything or keep rewriting everything. So it needs to be on the strategic systems, right? So, and then in order to achieve what? To achieve business agility. Because if there is no business goal, I don't think we should do anything. So I believe that nowadays, every technical problem is a business problem. And that's what we need to focus on, right? So is evolving the business. So fixing the technology, we're evolving the technology so that we can evolve the business. We can support the business evolution. So that's how I define modernization. Another thing that I want to make it very clear, the way that I define software modernization, I'm not talking about smaller or small technical improvements. I'm not talking about writing some unit test or do some minor refactorings. So this is, for me, part of how you build system normally. As you are evolving your system, as you're building your features, of course, you will need to make sure that they work. And for that, hopefully, we automate, we have a repetitive process to make sure that everything works, and that's where the automated tests come in. And most of us prefer to do that beforehand, using test-driven development and automating pipelines and things like that. But and those is small refactoring. So this is part of day-to-day business as usual, let's say. A software modernization for me is a strategic approach. It's something far bigger, far more business-oriented, that it will be a larger effort, but also with a much bigger business impact, much bigger than just writing a unit test or refactoring a small piece of code. So why do we fail to make a case for it? Because as you can, I believe that most of you in this talk, you work for companies and you work with a lot of different people. You work with developers, with architects, with product owners, with business people, with marketing, sales. Like, there's loads of people involved in a software project. And each one of us, we look at things from a different perspective. And quite often, people see problems in different ways, but we all fail to express, to align so that we can improve things. So why, and mainly developers, like, this is something that frustrates a lot of technical people, including myself, because that's my background. I was always thinking, like, why they don't understand what I'm saying? I can see all those problems here. There is tons of inefficiencies in our systems, in the way we work, in the technology that we use or whatever, and no one listens to me. And, you know, it's fine when one person doesn't listen to you. and then 2 people don't listen to you. And then you are talking to people and no one's listening to you. No one understands where you are coming from. No one wants you to invest in those ideas that you so passionately defend or are trying to push across. At some point, we need to introspect and say, maybe I'm the one that is failing in communicating, because it's not possible that the whole world doesn't understand what I'm saying. I'm the only one that is right in here. And this is when quite a few years ago, it clicked finally in my head, in my developer head, and said, look, I'm not speaking the same language. And the problem is me. I'm failing to communicate. Right? This is one of the principles that I like the most. Like there is a book that I personally like a lot. It's called Extreme Ownership. And every time that something is not going according to how I think, or that they should go, I will always think, what am I doing wrong? And if people are not seeing the world how I see it, probably I'm failing to communicate that. So that led me to change my approach and say, like, you know what, if I'm defending those techniques, those practices, what problem I'm trying to solve? And that led me to start thinking more about business, right? Because at the end of the day, we are paid to do a job. Whatever we do is for the benefit of the business, right? So I'm gonna, in the next section of this talk, I'm gonna give you what I consider the foundational, or like the essential knowledge that we need to have even before we decide to drive change, right? So we need to understand what the business drivers are, right? So we want to drive technical change to create a long-lasting impact, right? So I realized that as a developer, we love to think that we know a lot about a lot of things, but I started my company about 8 years ago, and it was just when that I realized how little I knew about business, right? So because as soon as you run a business or you are in charge of a department in a larger organization, you start dealing with profit and loss, we start doing a cost, we start talking about revenue, because we need to pay the bills, we need to make money. It's not about this ambition from the owners. Like, you need to pay salaries every month. You need to make sure that your business is up and running. You need to think about the future. You cannot only run your company with the information that we have today. You always need to look ahead. So I realized that I knew nothing about those things. And driving technical change at that level, at the strategic level, you need to have business acumen. You need to start learning about business. So understanding business drivers is very, very important when you're trying to drive technical change. So, for example, why are we trying to change? Why are we trying to modernize anything? There can be many different reasons. Those are just 6 of them that are far more, but those are very common, the ones that I see more common, right? But they are not a limited set. It's just like a small subset. So let's talk about some of them. Sustainable change. So the business needs to evolve sustainably, right? In a sustainable pace. And we know that things will always be changing, as there is that cliche that we say that change is the only constant in business and in technology and everything, right? So we know that we will always be changing. So we need to modernize your systems, or our systems, our technology needs to be created in a certain way so that we don't resist change. We actually embrace that change. And so for that, we need to, one of the drivers for the business is making sure that we can always embrace change, right? So, and for that, it needs to be sustainable. So we need to be looking at removing some, for example, reducing lead time, reducing the cost of change. So reducing the cost of change, I think that is quite key in this. So this is one of the business drivers. I don't want to go through all of them. I will probably go a bit faster in this section, but it's just to give you an idea of things that you need to have in mind when you speak to the business, right? So innovation, right? So of course the business wants to innovate, and there are many different types of innovation as well. And reasons for that innovation. So you want to stay competitive, but also, like, one aspect of innovation, it needs to be easy to experiment, needs to be safe to fail. So your systems, they need to be designed in a certain way where experiments can be made. right? Or can be done, and you get that quick feedback loop from those experiments. Or you need to release feature faster because you have competitors, so you need to create new services and new ways of working. So you want to make decisions about that are based on data and have that fast feedback loop. So all of those things are business reasons, and they might be drivers for us to have a better technology or in systems, right? And how we achieve that in many different ways, right? So leverage technology. So as technology evolves, we might not need to spend so much time building in-house things that became commodity. So cloud computing, for example, right? Today we have AWS, you have Azure, you have Google Cloud. So those platforms, they do a lot of things for us in terms of observability, in terms of security, in terms of scalability, and so on and so forth. So all of that, we can leverage that technology. And the more, because those are commoditized things, right? So they're commodities, they're not core to our business. This is what every business benefits from. So there's no point in us building those things in-house. So leverage technology is another driver to the business, because if we can leverage technology, we have more time and money to do other things. Business alignment, sometimes the way that the company evolved, and as companies are evolved, new departments are created, new business units, new ways of operating, more integrations and partnerships with other companies, and sometimes our systems become misaligned with the existing organization of the company. We talk about Conway's law quite often. So we want to make sure that the systems are architected in a way that they reflect how the business works. But as the business is evolving, the systems will need to evolve to support those new ways of working. So this is another drive that is quite often happens. People and culture. This is one thing that I wanted to add, because not many people think about that. A common problem that companies tell me is they say like, we are struggling to hire. We want to hire talent, but hiring is always difficult. Well, the whole world is hiring, right? So every single company that I know is hiring. And of course, at every company, good companies want great developers, great people, right? Great professionals. But then there is the other side of the coin as well. Great professionals want great companies. So having a modern technology allows you to attract and retain more talent, because if you are using very old and out-of-fashion technology, you will struggle to attract and maintain talent. And if you are a business that relies so much in technology, evolving your technology, as part of your strategy, you need to make sure that you have a constant stream of talent, because inevitably people will come and go, right? So they will join a company, they will stay for a few years. At some point, they will want to do something else. And so for every business, you need to make sure that you are always attractive, that as people come your company, stay in your company and leave, you are able to cope with that cycle, let's say. But you need to be attractive. And then there is, of course, like a very common one is risk management. I work with most of our clients are enterprise clients. They are very large organizations in different sectors. And we have some companies, some clients in, let's say, regulated environments as well. But risk management comes in all shapes and forms. So, for example, what is the risk of, imagine like a website, if you rely a lot on your online presence, your website going down, or security failing, or something like that. So, of course, that the businesses, they need to think strategically, like, what are our major risks in our technology and business? So a lot of drivers for modernization is all about mitigating risk. It's like, what are the major risks? Are we covered for those? Like, if they become an issue, how big of an issue? What are our, how can we deal with that, right? So those are drivers. And it's, as I said, before you even start talking about modernizing systems, you need to understand, if you're pushing a change, what business areas you might be addressing so that you can make that case. But then there is another side to it as well. Let me just get some water. You might be in a case where a lot of people might understand the drivers. Yes, we would love to do that, but like there's always impediments, right? So for example, here there are tones. Lack of time and lack of money. Like they are the most traditional. Yeah, we would love to do that, but we don't have time or money. So all of those impediments, some of them are real impediments, but like some of them you can dig a little bit deeper. If we don't have time or money, why don't we have time and money? Where is our money and time being spent? Are we spending time and money in areas that we should spend time and money, or we have too many inefficiencies in the business that is taking our time and money? Because if we resolve those inefficiencies first, we might be in a position where we will have more time and money in the near future so that we can use that into more strategic areas. And that is everything here. You need to understand as a change agent, if you like, or someone trying to drive change, you need to understand those impediments, those fears. You might not have the skills, and that's a real impediment, right? So you cannot just say, hey, we want to modernize our systems and take some of the people that don't have the skills and run the risk of creating a brand new platform that is as bad as the existing one because of lack of skills, not because people are not committed in doing a good job. They are trying to do a good job. They just might not have the right skills to do that. So this is a real problem, and you need to think about that when you are trying to propose a solution. Or some people just fear the risks, or they tried in the past and say, oh, this is the third time that someone is asking us to rewrite our monolith. So you need to understand what went wrong. Can we minimize those fears? Can we minimize those risks? So this is very, very important that you understand. And then there are the principles of modernization as well. So there are things that, because when you say software modernization, it's a bit scary for people. So you need to make sure that you set the boundaries or the principles and say, look, yes, we want to create a big vision. We want to create that aspiration, let's say, where we would like to be. But I'm not asking for you to freeze for 5 years while we rebuild the whole thing. No. We are going to work always in small increments. You're going to create a vision, but small increments. And every increment should have business value, right? We should every time that we change something in our systems, we should be adding some value. We should moving towards that idea, that vision, right? So there will be. I wish I could say that we won't have any business disruption. I haven't seen any large modernization strategic approach without any disruption to business as usual. There will be. But there are many different ways to minimize that to a reasonable level, so that is worth doing that. So, but again, you as driving those changes, you need to keep that in mind. How do I minimize disruption? Because we need to keep moving as a business. So do everything you can to not stop business as usual, right? Because you cannot do that. There is this dichotomy, mainly in the software craftsmanship world, between excellence and pragmatism, right? So a lot of people in the craftsmanship world, or people that are very not religious is not the word, but like people that are very dogmatic and we should use this technique or that technology. They are thinking in their head about excellence. We need to be excellent in everything. No, we don't. This is something that took me some time to understand. So we don't need to have excellence everywhere. But at the same time, pragmatism is not an excuse to cut corners. It's not just a fancy word to do a bad job, right? So how do we combine pragmatism and excellence? I feel that excellence without boundaries, or unbounded excellence, is dangerous because it creates a lot of waste. People end up trying to create these beautiful solution, and they forget that they need to, the business needs to move, we need to have a return on investment, that we need to pay the bills, we need to satisfy our customers. So I don't like this idea of just focus on excellence. What I like to do is to say, what is the most pragmatic solution that we can find to solve this problem? And then we draw a boundary in that pragmatic solution. Say, this will be our solution. And within that pragmatic boundary, or the boundaries of that pragmatic solution, then you have excellence. So that's, for me, is a principle in modernization. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Don't spend time and money fixing systems or areas of your technology or areas of your business that are not strategic, that are not in a critical path. Or even if they are strategic, but they are not going to change in the future, there's no point in changing it. So be very precise where you put those efforts. And then there is the law of diminishing return. That is a summary of what I was saying. So when you modernize an area of your system, you don't need to modernize 100%, right? So it's the Pareto's law. That's a different way of thinking, right? So you might put you choose the 20% of effort that will cause you an 80% of improvement and stop there, right? So trying to have like 100% of improvement is normally waste. There is a point where keeping investing in that area or modernizing that area further diminishes the return on investment in that area, right? So you need to keep those in mind. So up until now, everything that I was saying serves as the foundation knowledge. Before you understand those things, I think that you should not even have in a conversation. You need to have that internalized in your head. Once you understand, you have that kind of vision, then we are ready to start talking about modernization initiatives. And for modernization initiatives, I try to break them down in a very simplified way because it's far more complex than that, but this helps me to pass the idea in 5 kind of stages, right? The first 2 stages is the alignment stages, like there is a business alignment and a technical alignment. And then we talk about creating a technical. Once we are aligned, both on business and technology, then we create a plan to actually execute, to fix the issues and modernize the systems. So this is important because this is where most of us fail. And this is certainly where I failed many times in my career in the past. In my head was always clear what the problems were. And because it was clear to me what the problems were, I was always trying to discuss a solution, right? So I would go to my peers, my boss, my manager, my whoever, and I'll say, look, we need to split the monolith and go microservices, because microservices is the future, right? So if you don't do microservice, we are going to be out of market, because microservices sent by God, and we need to solve all the problems with microservice, or test-driven development, or cloud, or lambdas, or whatever, right? So I was always pushing a solution, but I was never agreeing on the problem, because people could not see the problem that I was trying to solve. They would shut down the solution, of course, as they should. So let me start. So how can you, so the idea here is to explain to you, giving you more ammunition and tools for you to run those alignments and that strategy so that you can drive that change in your organization. So let's talk about business alignment. And by the way, if you are a technical person that you think that, but I don't want to do the business alignment, so good luck, because it will be very difficult for you to drive technical change. That's where I was frustrated. And I said, look, you know what? If I don't go to the business, if I don't understand how business run, I will never drive technical change, right? So everything I drive, it will be very, very small change, but never a significant change. So when you are trying to do business alignment, it's important that we bring a lot of people together. So this alignment phase, well, all the phases, but you need to have a few key stakeholders, the people that are sponsors that will be paying for the effort, or their representatives if they cannot join. But like all the key stakeholders, from the technical side and the business side, you need to bring those people together. And so everyone needs to align on the business first. And what does it mean? We need to understand what business problems we are trying to solve. So, and also decide where. So I'm not expecting for you to read those boxes and stuff, but like one of the things is, imagine like you are in a very large organization. You need to calibrate that conversation, because you cannot just say, well, which business problems do we want to solve? And if you are in a very large company, you have 1 billion problems to solve. But that doesn't mean that you can act in all of them. So then you need to be very focused in the areas that you have control. So for example, this is an exercise we've done with a client. So we sat down with the senior management and some of the senior tech leads, and we tried to map their organization. Which areas do you have? And which areas of your business are more critical in the next few years, or is giving you a lot of headache right now? So then we were able to narrow down, to focus on very specific areas. And in those areas, then we say, okay, now let's try to understand what are the business problems that we have in those specific areas. You can calibrate that depending on the size of your organization, right? So if you're in a very large organization, I recommend that you narrow down the focus. If you're in a smaller organization, it can go wider. And then we need to align what is this modernization for? Are we trying to prepare for future change? Are we trying to reduce cost? Is it we are struggling to become compliant with regulations or accreditations or stuff like that? Or do we have inefficiencies that we want to solve, like we don't release very often, or we have loads of bugs? Or, for example, experimenting is very difficult. We would love to have some prototypes or experiment with new features, but it's very, very difficult. So this is the first part of your alignment, is understanding some of those problems and what you would like to focus on. Then you can do, for example, once you have that focus, it's like, now we start bringing people together, because this is what is another fascinating thing. When you bring people from different departments and different, how can I say, different types of roles, they look at the same systems or departments or business area in a completely different way. So it's important that at that point to say, look, if you are looking at this area of our business, what are the main features? What are the main business things that they do? What are the pain points? What they would like to improve if they could? And a great way for doing that is one of my favorite exercises called value stream mapping. We've done that tons of times. And every time I do that in a new company with a new client, is that an amazing feeling? Because like you bring those people, and this is again, you don't need us. You can do yourselves, right? You just need a good facilitator to do that. But basically, a value stream mapping. This is, by the way, just one example. We have many of those. There are many of those workshops out there, right? So the value stream mapping maps from an idea, from the moment that someone in the business has an idea all the way to software in production. And this is a real workshop that we've done with one of our clients a long time ago. So I don't expect you to read all those post-its. That's not the point. But I wanted to show the size. So we had people, like, for example, we had product owners from different areas. We have a business sponsor. We have architects. We had QAs. We had people from the operations and production services that they called. So we started to say, look, who has ideas? Where the requirements come from? And then the product owners and the business sponsor, they started talking. But the operations people and the QA, they were quiet because they don't have access to that part of the value stream. So then so they never knew, the developers don't know exactly how the initial portfolio or the initial backlog was constructed. Constructed by whom? Who prioritized that? So then for those people, that was very enlightening to understand what happens before the work comes to them. And then, as I was saying, okay, that's how you organize, you create business priorities and stuff. Good. So how do you feed that to the teams? And then they start describing the process. And then what happens when it gets to the team? And then the people in the team, the technical leads, the architects, they start more vocal. The product owners, oh, we work like that, we do this and that. And then how do you do testing? Oh, the testing we do this way, and we get those people involved. And all of a sudden, in different parts of the value stream, different people got involved. And the others had absolutely no idea how the whole flow worked. And at the end of this exercise, everyone was looking at the board and it's like, really? Is this how we work? So no one knew the whole flow. And the cool thing about doing these kind of things is that at that point, you can start mapping when something goes wrong, how far back it goes in the flow on the value stream. Where are the bottlenecks? Because like we were discussing, like for it to move to the next level, how long does it take to build a user story or to test it or to deploy or to whatever, validate or to organize the backlogs or what? And what is the time from the idea to software in production? And we were talking about months, right? So 4 or 5 weeks just at the end for the final deployment and stuff. So this allows to start aligning the business so that we see the entire process. And then we decide where are the bottlenecks, what are the areas that could be optimized. And some of them will be related to software, some of them will be related to process. So, but this is not enough. This is just how we work. So we also need to understand where the business wants to go. What do the business want to achieve in the next quarters or year or so? What are the goals, the impacts that they want to have? So what is in their backlog? What is the prioritization for different teams? This is important for us to know because depending on which area we are going to work on, we need to understand the impact that it will have in some of the business aspirations and teams and everything else. So another aspect is the constraints. I'm going to rush a bit because I realize that I'm going to run out of time. So, and I have a lot to cover. So another thing that we need to look at, what are the business constraints? Because sometimes we developers, we don't understand why the business doesn't do certain things. And the business, vice versa, they don't understand why we cannot go faster, right? So look at the business constraint. What are the constraints? We have external deadlines, certifications, regulations, lack of skills. So there are many constraints that we need to understand. Can we remove some of those constraints, or we need to work under those constraints? This is an important thing to discuss, right? So that everyone is clear that if we cannot remove constraints, we need to work under constraints. Then we will do our best within those constraints. So, and by the way, lack of time and money are valid constraints, right? So again, there are OKRs, KPIs, metrics. But there are 4 key metrics. This comes from the Accelerate book. If you haven't read the book, I certainly recommend, regardless if you are a developer, product owner, if you are involved in software systems, in software projects, sorry. This is, even if you are a sponsor or a business person, I highly recommend reading the Accelerate book. So they talk about 4 key metrics, that those are, regardless of the environment, I think that they are very good metrics for you to keep an eye on. So how often are we releasing things, right? So what is the lead time when something goes wrong? So the lead time from idea to production, how often do we deploy? If something goes wrong, how often, how quickly can we fix that? And how often things go wrong? So those things are very important to keep an eye on, and they serve as a guideline for us to modernize systems. Once we are all clear about the business alignment, we do a technical alignment, and this needs to be done with the business people, not only technical. Some people, the business people would now say, okay, my job is done. I explained how the business priorities, what the business priorities are. So no, they need to stay. So the technical alignment is not to talk about Java code or unit test or low-level programming or scripting or whatever. This is talk about architecture, different systems, platform. So we need to understand what is the existing technical solution. How many systems do we have? Which major features each one of those systems have? So, for example, the last one on the right, this was a functional mapping that we call. So, for example, in order to show some things on the website, we were mapping what kind of systems or services were involved so that we could provide that information on the website. So mapping those journeys, business journeys to the systems or areas of the system was very enlightening to the business as well, because they need to, again, they don't need to understand Java, they don't need to understand, or whatever programming language you use, they don't need to understand technical details, they need to understand how your systems are structured, so that when they ask for a change or a business or for a business flow to be completed, those are all the different systems or pieces of your architecture that are involved, right? So this is very, very important that they also understand at the high level. And then we can talk about the same things that we've done for the business. What are the pain points with the current technology? What are the desired improvements? What are the technical constraints? Because we also have constraints on the technical side, not only the business. And also, what are the risks? If you want to touch certain aspects of our technology, what are the risks in doing that? And constraints, you might have many different ones technically. For example, our largest client, they are in the healthcare industry. There is an American client. They cannot be multi-tenant. What it means, they need to be multi-instance. Every single client that they have, they need to have a full production environment for that specific client, right? So they have more than 11,000 production installations, and 4,000 of them are on-premise. So when you understand these kind of things, you are constrained. This is a constraint. We cannot go microservices. Like microservices, imagine like you, if keeping one production environment is already complicated, imagine keeping 11,000 production environments full of very small pieces talking to each other. It will be quite crazy, and mainly when you have on-premise installations as well. So those are things that you need to understand. Or data, the location of where data should live, or the investment that we can make, because we don't have an unlimited amount of money or time. So all of those things, or maybe the company made a decision that they would invest in a specific technology, and you cannot just now switch from AWS to whatever you want to do. You might need to stick with AWS, which is, again, as long as you're with the major ones, it's okay, but like, it's a constraint, and you need to understand that. So once we are aligned, so this is the alignment phase. At this point, what I expect to happen is that both business and technology, or everyone involved in that modernization strategy or approach, sorry, they understand where they are, what they want to achieve, and the focus that they should have. This is extremely important. If this is not done well, you cannot create a strategy. Whatever you try to do now will fail, because you'll not be mitigating, you'll not be addressing the right problems, right? So then we start creating a technical vision. A technical vision for me is a direction, it's not a plan, right? I like to talk about the magical wand, right? So imagine if you could have a magical wand, you could say just bling, and then you would be in this amazing technical ecosystem and stuff. So, but you need to be very realistic as well, right? So you need to have a big vision, but a vision is something that you probably never achieve, but it will serve as a direction, right? If you want to improve towards what? In which direction? So you need to have that. And for that, you need to take into account architecture, technology, testing, deployment, so on and so forth, security, all of stuff. But you need to create that direction together, right? And what do you need to take into account? This is not just technical now. When you are creating a technical vision, you need to be thinking about which business. Is it aligned with the business vision? Is it aligned with the business strategy? Are we working under the business constraints and the technical constraints? So given the constraints that we have, is this a feasible, an achievable vision or direction, let's say? Because there's no point in you go crazy and say like, yeah, we'd like to change the whole world. So that magical wand needs to now be reduced to, okay, we have constraints. There are things that we will never achieve. So it will be a direction, but we're probably never gonna get there, but it's still achievable, right? So it's a achievable direction. So once we have a direction, we will not achieve that maybe ever, or maybe we'll achieve a percentage of that. We're going to walk towards that, but never get there. But like, we need to have now a strategy to start moving in that direction. So a very simplistic way of talking about modernization strategies, and this is, you see, like in Gartner, all those reports that I think they try to really simplify for very stupid people to understand, which I think that is a mistake. I think that people are mainly like people in key positions, they didn't get there being stupid, right? So a lot of people try to simplify, oh, if you have a modernization approach, it's either a rewrite, or a replatform, or a re-architect, or a refactor, or whatever. My experience, all the modernization approach we had was a hybrid. Like, I don't think we should, I would never recommend rewriting an entire system, ever. Like, it would be like my absolutely last resort. If everything else would, we don't see that anything else will work, then we go for a rewrite. I don't think we should re-platform the entire system. I don't think we should re-architect the entire system, and I don't think that we ever should refactor the entire system. Normally, what you want is a hybrid. You talk to very few specific and strategic locations, and in those strategic locations, some of them I will refactor, some of them I will isolate and might rewrite, some of them I might move to the cloud or change the architecture, but always in very specific places, according to the business goals that I want to achieve, but not across the entire solution. I think that would be a waste of time. But then there are different ways of talking about that. So this is why I say that is a hybrid, because we don't, I think that this slide in here is, people that think about like that in modernization, they have a very simplistic approach to modernization. I don't think that they ever done modernization in their lives. Normally, our modernization is more focused. So here are examples of prioritization for technical strategy. One is a functional area. Those are just examples. There are more, but just for you to understand. For example, one client that we had, they were an e-commerce, online e-commerce, so selling loads of stuff online, loads of clients and stuff. They had problems with their payment system at some point. And that caused them a lot of problems, right? So they lost money, and they also credibility as well. They had a reputational issue. And they hired us and said, look, this can never, ever happen again. So that modernization effort was very focused on a functional area that was the payment area, and it was all about risk mitigation and stabilizing that area. So that was very focused on a functional area. There were another client, completely different. They had business flows that were not very optimal. They had hundreds of employees that had to go to 3 different systems to do their jobs. And that there was loads of manual work and inefficiency and spreadsheets and stuff. So we took business flows, business journeys that would touch multiple systems, and we just modernized that journey. So the rest of those systems still they remained messy, but the journey we optimized. That's where the value was. And then you can, for example, code hotspots. It sounds a bit strange, but for example, very often clients have a lot of development teams, and the development teams cannot work well in parallel. So because they're always working on the same parts of the code base. So ideally, if you have multiple developers and multiple teams, the idea to have more people is that you parallelize work, that you become very efficient in creating parallelized streams of work. And in order for you to parallelize work, your code needs to be designed to allow that to happen. So then we identify the hotspots of the code where people were always fighting over, and we start modularizing the system in a way that different teams would own or be responsible for different modules, so that they could work independently and test independently and release independent. So this is another way to prioritize your technical strategies. And then there are much more operational aspects, observability of your systems in production, and repeatable process, and so on and so forth, but you have an idea now. So, and then there are the technical strategies themselves, right? That was the business prioritization, the way to think, how we're gonna tackle the problem. Here is the more technical approach. Would we keep a modular monolith for that large client that I was saying? This was our approach. We need a modularized system, but we are going to keep it a monolith, but modular, right? So, or we go microservices, or you can have the stronger fig, or you can have like one thing that we called a UI-based flow orchestration. So this was a modernization that we were not only modernizing from, because modernizing on the single technology stack is very challenging, but it's not as challenging as moving to a different technology stack. So we were getting a PHP system to go to Java, a PHP monolith to go to Java microservices. That approach was very complicated to do because we wanted to do in small stages. We were not going to rewrite. We would just be modernizing and making sure that for the user, they would be accessing the PHP and the new Java services without even noticing. So then we had to change how the UI worked and how the flows work to redirect things. So this is where the technical approach comes in. Yeah. So modularization will always be key, right? Whatever you do, but modularization doesn't mean microservices. I cannot emphasize this enough, right? Modularization means like different modules that are cohesive. That means they have their own responsibilities and they are loose coupled, right? So, and that's how teams should be organized. We have cohesive teams that are loose coupled. So the integration, the interaction between modules and between teams is kept to a minimum and very well defined. Because this thing that everyone touches everything, and is almost like the code being entangled as well, right? So modularization is important. Why is it important? Because as you have the well-defined modules, you reduce the cognitive load. You can have as your systems, or you can have hundreds of systems and they can be very big, but if the modules are well defined, when you are touching that module, you reduce the cognitive load and you can make changes that are localized, right? So it's much easier and faster to build tests, to write automated tests that runs fast because you have a well-defined module, right? Continuous delivery. You should not, companies that have continuous delivery, they're not releasing their entire platform every hour. They are releasing small bits here and there because they were able to modularize that in a specific way. So as the teams are working on the different areas of the system, they can release just those areas independent from the other. That's what gives them that very strong business agility, right? So again, as I was saying, modularization can happen at the system level. So it can be a group of services. For example, this payment example that I was giving, the payment area was a module compared to others. We have a catalog area, we have a product, we have a pricing, and we have a payment area. But the payment module was composed by multiple services. So each service was also a module within the payment. So the group of services was a conceptual module, was a business module. And within that conceptual module, there were deployable modules. And then within each one of those services, we had libraries and components, and we have packages and namespaces and classes. Each one of those levels is a module, right? So, and then finally, once we understand the alignment, we are all aligned, we know what we're trying to solve, why we're trying to solve, where we're trying to solve. What is the vision, where we should be going, what would be the steps? So then how do we organize ourselves? Here there are many different approaches. All of them have pros and cons, right? So for example, some companies, most of the work that we do, we use this approach, like we have a dedicated team. Because we are a consultancy, so it makes sense when they hire us to have a dedicated team. So a dedicated team has the advantage of taking a modernization stream of work and just dedicate to get that done as fast as possible. Because a modernization, you need to you need to modernize that area for you to get the return on investment. So it's important that we do that as fast as we can so that the money can be used in creating new features and not just modernizing the system. So a dedicated team has the advantage of getting or working on the modernization tasks much faster and setting the the foundation for other teams to build on top. But there are disadvantages. The knowledge is not always well shared. People can be a bit feeling left out and say, like, why are those people working on some cool stuff and I'm doing business as usual? So that is a bit of that as well. So then sometimes they create specialized teams. They just bring a few people with a few skill sets to help them. Sometimes, for example, most of the place that I worked before, CodeJuniors, like we had a unified backlog. So you know what? Let's not have two backlogs, like a business backlog and a technical debt backlog. Because what normally happens, the technical backlog, we just add stuff to it and never remove it, right? Because it's never a priority to work on the tech backlog. So it's our job to say, look, all those technical debt, all those technical inefficiencies, they are a business problem, and this is how they are impacting the business. And then expressing that allows us to bring the two backlogs together and discuss the value. So there is value in creating a new feature, but there is also value in reducing inefficiencies or allowing teams to work in parallel. Right. So others had. So what is the advantage and disadvantage? Well, so sometimes you are working on business. So you have one team that sometimes focuses in one area, sometimes it focuses in another area. The advantage, they keep the knowledge. The disadvantage is that everything, the business and the attention to business and modernization is divided. The 20% improvements. I also work in a team like that. Some clients want to do that. This is only good for very, very small improvements. You cannot do anything strategic just giving 20% of the time for some people. You can do maybe like do some small refactorings here and there, maybe add a few automated tests here and there, maybe optimize a script, but you never change your infrastructure. You never change your architecture. So again, the focus will always be business as usual, and you have this back burner for very tiny, I don't even call these modernization, very tiny small improvements in there. But again, for certain companies, that's the right thing to do. And then some people dedicate individuals. Again, so all of those modules has pros and cons. If you really want to accelerate the modernization so that you can spend money later on in innovation, dedicated team and a specialized team will get you there faster. Always keep in mind that every modernization effort should be run as a normal agile project. You should have an incremental approach. You should have roadmap and milestones. You do an iterative way. You do demos. You talk about value. Every task that you have, they should have a business value attached to them. So everything that you do in a normal project, you would have in a modernization project as well. So this is a summary. So if you want to drive a strategical a modernization, if you want to have a modernization initiative and drive that in a strategic way, you need to bring people along. You need to be able to bring everyone together, make sure that everyone is aligned. We are all very clear about the problems that we are trying to solve and the benefits that the business will have in solving those problems. If you don't get there, it will be very difficult to be successful because people will not be happy. And then I won't spend much time because I just realized that we are out of time, but there is a way for much larger organizations, and we work with quite a few, is to create what we call a continuous improvement program. And this is part of the strategic decision-making of the company. So that the people that are responsible for defining the portfolio for the company, that are creating the strategy for the next quarter or 6 months or 12 months or whatever. So they are looking at from a business perspective, but they should also, mainly for CTOs, head of engineering, because they are part of those kind of decisions, they should have their visions like, okay, what are the key improvements that we want to do in the next quarter, in the next 6 months, the next 12 months, where are we going? So then we can create a continuous improvement program that would have its own backlog of initiatives, of modernization initiatives. Again, those are not small things. Normally they tend to be 3, 6, 12 months long, each one of them. They are significant. They have a significant impact on your business. And then they have this backlog, and then they will distribute to the teams. There is far more to it, but I won't. I can expand if you ask questions. And ultimately, again, I won't expand because we are out of time, but like what we would like to do in a healthy organization, we want to align the design of your product, all the stages from the product definition, because it's cyclical as well. A company that has a product, that has an online business, they're always thinking about their product. What are the major things that they want to do or the product to do in the next 6, 12, 18 months? So they are constantly redefining their product. We need to align all those phases of those cycles of product definition all the way to the cycles of building user stories. How can we create a technology strategy that can support that evolution, that continuous evolution of the product with a continuous evolution of the technology, right? That's what we want to achieve. But this is going to be, I have a full talk on that slide in specific where I just go deeper into what they mean, but that will be for another opportunity. Okay, so that was me. So thank you. I don't know if you have any questions.
Hello, Sandra, again. Thank you for the presentation. It was really great to hear your experience on that topic.
My pleasure.
Now we will have time for questions, and we have some questions actually from live stream, so I can show them and read them to you. Maybe. Is dedicated team strategic contrast to agility? How can agile teams handle this?
Oh, they are not in contrast at all. So as I was saying, the dedicated team, they run as a normal agile team. And another thing that you need the way to think about it is that the modernization initiatives are a business initiative. They just have the difference is that instead of focusing on what features our users might want or our partners and stuff, the focus of a modernization is more towards the business, the sponsors. It's like our business can be better in how we do things. But all of the modernization initiatives, they have a normal business value as all the other initiatives. And the way that you implement them is exactly how you do for the other business initiatives. It's exactly the same way. It's just the focus is far more technical. That's all.
Thank you for the answer. Then we can proceed with the second question. Rather than having unreachable goals for technical vision, why shouldn't we have reachable goals to congratulate ourselves and setting new goals?
Yeah, because there is a difference between a vision and roadmaps, milestones, right? So I normally like to work with a vision that is always ahead. Let's say that we say like we would like to do X, Y, and Z, and we know that when you do an analysis, a gap analysis, right? So where we would like to be and where we are, there is a gap, right? And let's say that in order to close that gap, it might take some time, right? 12 months to 24 months, or God knows, like finger in the air, but it's not going to be achieved in a month for sure, right? So I like to have that vision that's going to drive us. But then we have milestones. This is what I was saying about the iterative approach. It's like, okay, we know that we want to go there, but it will take a while. So what is the next step? What could we achieve in the next 3 months? Because we need to learn. We need to start going in that journey. So then we create a milestone. We create a strategy just for that first 3 months. And then we walk that walk. And we achieve or try to achieve that 3 months goal. And when we get there, now we moved a bit towards that vision. And we learned more. And we are now at the right point to recalibrate that vision. Now that we learned more, we moved in this direction for 3 months. Is that vision that we created 3 months ago is still valid? Or do we need to recalibrate? And let's say that it's still valid, we walk for another 3 months. In 6 months' time, now that we learn more, maybe the vision needs to be changed. And we need to push ourselves and say, you know what? We achieved a few things already, and we can give ourselves a pat in the back and say, hey, we are already getting a return on investment for those smaller achievements. It's time to push ourselves forward or even further. So you always keep that excitement of achieving in a shorter period, but always having that goal that you are chasing, because that keeps things exciting. This is how I see things.
Thank you so much for the answer. Then the next question. Modernization with small change can be empowering with its positive effect. Can't long-term modernization have a devastating effect?
Only if you don't iterate, right? So if you keep that iterative approach that I just described, you always have that sense of achievement and you can always recalibrate. I'm not a believer, even in modernization projects, regardless if it's modernization or business, of creating, this is what I was saying, there is a difference between a vision and a plan. The vision is a direction, it's not a plan that we need to, because you cannot plan for 5 years or 3 years or 2 years, but you can set a direction. And so I think that if you won't have that devastating effect if you are constantly inspecting what you achieved and in which direction you should keep going.
Thank you so much for the answer. My question is, you suggested building a dedicated team, but how it was your strategies? What about teams failing? Other teams know that they are doing bad things. How did you deal with this?
So this question is difficult to answer because context is very important here, right? I'll be giving you an answer, but I have certain context in my mind that it will be difficult for me to expand in a very short period of time. So what normally happens is when you have a dedicated team, that dedicated team is trying to solve a problem that will enable other teams to perform better. And to perform doesn't mean, I'm not talking that individually those professionals are not performing well. I'm saying that because of the technical complexity of their systems or the lack of test or automation, they are not, even with the best intentions, they cannot move fast enough, and that frustrates them. So a dedicated team can tackle those problems faster. So in combination of them, because this dedicated team is not a team that is working in isolation. This dedicated team is a team that is aligned with all the other stakeholders. Remember that the alignment phase of the business, the technical alignment and stuff. So a lot of key people, including architects or team leads of other teams, are part of that decision because they need to tell what the problems really are. And that dedicated team will act on those problems in order to enable the other teams. And more often than not, for example, we work with a lot of monoliths. Most of our modernization projects has a big monolith in the middle, which means that as we are working on the core of the monolith, we need to interact with loads of teams, and not only teams, but most organizations that we work, they have silos as well, which means that for us to get a testing environment, we need to speak to one department. If you want to have a QA as part of the team, they come from a different organizational structure. If you want to talk about automating the deployment pipeline, you need to talk to the ops guys. So as you are doing that, you are constantly iterating, and the outcome of that will be used by all the other teams. And there is a handover as well, because that dedicated team should not be there forever. You should hand it over. Either they are done with that initiative and they move to another initiative, or they hand it over to other teams.
Thank you. Then the next question, what difference should we consider if we want to drive modernization within the company, etc., as a consultant from outside?
So in terms of the work is almost the same. I wouldn't say that there is a difference. It's normally like sometimes companies don't have the capacity. A lot of companies today, they have way too much work, and it's this is why they are hiring, right? So they want to expand because they have way too much work. So they don't have the capacity sometimes, and sometimes they also don't have the skills. Right. So again, the skills is a barrier, and if you don't have people that are specialized in certain techniques or technologies, they will be slower and they might make even more mistakes, and then we end up building a new platform, a new modernized system that is not as optimal as it could be. So bringing an external company can help to speed up, can bring the knowledge in, help to share that knowledge within the organization. Can be much faster to do because the company should be specialized in what they do. But in terms of the work itself, in terms of, if you think about the consultants coming from that company, the kind of work, the kind of conversations that they have, how they align with the stakeholders, the actual going to the system and changing the code and automating the tests, if the companies internally have that knowledge, they could do that themselves, no doubt at all.
Thank you. Sometimes it is difficult to achieve value with the small change because business requires a big change in the business flow. In that case, is it acceptable to run a parallel process?
I will get back to this question. Just a reminder, there was another important aspect from the previous question. Sometimes bringing some external people helps to work. For example, some people in the same organization, like we had this experience many times. We go there and then we speak to a lot of people. We see their perspective, and then we get that information because, like, we are new to the company. We know nothing about the company. We get there in a few days. We speak to a lot of people and we learn a lot of things. And then we go to meetings and express some ideas and say, like, look, those are your things that you could improve. And then people, oh yeah, that's true, we could do that. And then someone comes to us, it's like, look, I've been saying this for 4 years. No one listened to me. You come here, you have a half an hour session. And I told you that, you gave that information, and now everyone listens. Yes. So this happens when you bring people from outside, right? Because the outside person doesn't have those problems, the personality problems. We are not trying to be promoted or see what I'm saying? Like, we are just neutral. So sometimes it also helps with that. But anyway, so this one, what difference should we consider with from one? So yes, please, thank you. So this is exactly the same problem for business features, right? So sometimes the business feature is not a new feature, it's just an evolution of an existing feature. And sometimes it's very difficult to change. So in very rare occasions, so for example, there is a very large modernization project. We have 4 different teams working in there in 4 different streams of work. One of the streams, the situation is so complex, we are so worried about that area that we went for the stronger fig. So we have a feature toggle, and we are creating a parallel implementation. So that once we stabilize so what we've done, we have a golden master test that tests the existing feature. We create a feature flag, and now we are building the new feature, or the same feature, but rewriting the feature. And we have the same test pointing to both implementations, right? So then we know that we completed. The problem with this approach is, like, it's safer safe in a way that it's faster sometimes it's faster to rewrite a feature, not a full system, than actually refactor, depending on the state of the code base. But the danger is what you are saying, is if this goes for too long, because then all of a sudden now you have 2 pieces of code doing the same thing, and the existing feature is still evolving. So if you keep that parallel implementation going for too long, then you are in the worst case scenario, because now you need to maintain the old and the new. And as the old keeps evolving, you have a catch-up game where the new is trying to catch up with the new one, and you never flip, and you never have the confidence to flip to the new one. So if you want for a parallel implementation, it needs to be for as short period as possible, but don't go for too long. And that is for modernization and business features.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Another question about rewriting. So how long will code rewrites take? Will the monolithic structure ever be abandoned? And when will we say when? In the next step, we have to rewrite it. Should we rewrite when productivity drops?
Again, without more context, it's difficult to be precise, but like I'll try to respond that in a more generic way. So in general, I'm against a rewrite for the entire system. I think that is not worth it. So trying to answer your question, very rarely I see a monolith die. Very rarely, because it's not needed. What you need, like a monolith, means that your system has a lot of functionalities that are deployed together. But some of those functionalities are far more important than others. And some of those functionalities will evolve in the future or are causing pain right now. And other functionalities will not evolve in the future, and they are not causing pain. They might be very badly written, but you or us as developers not liking how something was written is not enough for us to change it. It's not enough reason for us to change it. We should only change is it causing me problem now, or is it causing problem? It will cause me problem in the future because we want to build more features on top of this shaky foundation. And if that is the case, then we localize the modernization effort in there. And when possible, as the payment that I was describing earlier on, it was a monolith, and we extracted the entire payment module from the monolith and became a very clean set of services, but the rest remained in the monolith, and that was good enough.
Thank you so much. The next question is, we are currently using event storming to bring the technology and business parties together. What is the apparent advantage you can see of VSM over event storming?
I think that they are both valid methodologies. As I said, the value stream mapping is just one of the many workshops that you have out there. I know Alberto Brandolini very well, the guy that created event storming. So I think we even brought him to work with one of our clients a few years ago to run a session for event storming. I personally, but it's a personal opinion, I like event storming for when we are brainstorming new features for the systems. Like if we are saying like, what should happen? So if this happens, what should happen next? Or if this happened, what would trigger this? So we are trying to understand what could we do, how the system could behave. I love event storming for that. But to map how we currently work, I normally prefer value stream mapping. But can you use event storming to achieve that? Yes, you can. I just don't think that is the right workshop for that kind of work. But that's just me.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions. We also have one question to ask you, actually. What are the challenges in software modernization from your perspective?
It depends on which hat I'm wearing, right? So if I wear the hat of like a company that specializes in doing that, and I go to different organizations that want help, is trying to understand their entire process very quickly, because the process that I described, it can be done in a few days. This is not months of work. I'm talking about like between 3 to 5 days. If we, back in the day that we could all be in the same room, right? So because doing that online is very difficult. It's possible, but it's slower. But like doing that alignment and creating that strategy in a week, if we are all in the same place, we can get that done. But the amount of, for me, the most challenging aspects is to build such a holistic view of the entire business, both on the business and technology, and be able to advise on a technology strategy that would cater for those business and technical problems and constraints and stuff. So the amount of the breadth of knowledge that you need to have, and the amount of people that you need to talk to actually create that initial strategy so that you can have a team working on tasks, it's quite challenging.
Thank you. Then we have another question from live stream. When Merck started to modularize Molachiti application, how should we meet the planning while meeting the demands from different teams in this process?
Let me just try to understand. So when work is started to modularize a monolith application, how should we meet the planning while meeting the demands from different teams in this process? I'm not entirely sure what we are talking about here. I wonder if this is, you are talking about the same teams doing the modernization, and now it's from different teams in this. Maybe can get clarification, but I think that it might be a dependency on teams, maybe. Is there a way that we can get more clarification? So the demands, what we mean by demands from different teams, because this can be interpreted in different ways. So,
yeah, and there is delay to the live stream. Maybe Kevser can answer or share clarification about the question.
So I potentially can try like as the best as I can for my interpretation. So different teams might have different needs for modernization. So when you are doing that alignment, in the technical alignment and business alignment, we might understand what are the different needs from different teams. But certain needs, as you know, like the business has loads of needs, and we cannot tackle them all in one go. We need to prioritize them. That is the same thing. So different teams might have different demands or needs, if I'm reading that correctly. Then we need to prioritize and focus. Certain teams will need to wait. Another way to interpret that, it might be some dependencies, right? This is a much trickier, because like when you are planning the work, this is why I said about modularization and creating those conceptual boundaries, because once you define a focus on the area that you want to modernize, you also need to map everyone that is involved in that area, like being individuals, stakeholders, and teams. So how many people are involved there? Because if you start changing that area, like this will impact those people, and the work that they do will impact the modernization effort. So then we need to sit down, prioritize, we need to align and synchronize and so on.
Then thank you for the answer. Currently, there is no more question from live stream, but we would like to thank you for your presentation and for your answer, sharing your experience with us. And it was really nice to host you.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I had a great time. It's always good to talk about modernization. I love the topic myself. So, and it's great to be talking to Trendyol and the Turkish community as well. So, yeah, I've been to Istanbul a few years ago, and I had a great time. And I hope to go back to Turkey at some point in the future.
That will be really amazing. Would you like to share a last words with people who are watching us right now about software modernization?
Well, don't give up, I guess. But don't be frustrated. I think that probably what I would say that was important to me. I was frustrated that other people could not see the world the way I was seeing. So I had that passion. I wanted to change things, and everyone seems to shut down my ideas or said, no, we cannot do that. We don't have time, don't have money. And I was always frustrated, but frustrated because with other people, instead of looking at myself and say, like, if I believe on those things so deeply, why am I failing to express those ideas? What am I missing here? It's impossible. The whole world is wrong and I'm the only one right. So don't get disappointed, but look internally and see what can you improve in the way that you communicate, the way that you pass your ideas. That's probably what I would like to say.
Thank you so much. And it is the end of the session. We would like to thank you all people who watch us till now. And the presentation will be on our YouTube channel, so you can always watch it.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
See you.